welcome to the September 28th, 2022 City Council Work Session. Thank you for joining us in this hybrid meeting format using as our state and community continue to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. For work sessions like this one, where there is no opportunity for public comment, those wishing to access the meeting can do so by watching the live stream available on our website, the broadcast on Comcast Channel 21, or by calling into one of the phone numbers listed for this meeting on the public webcast and meeting materials web page. And thank you again for taking the time to join us. And with that, I call this meeting to order, and we'll turn it over to the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. A couple of things before we start, and this, I apologize if this makes Lydia's presentation redundant in any way, but our first session is a follow-up to the climate-friendly, equitable communities work session we had on September 12th. We kind of forecast then we'd be coming back specifically with work sessions. This one's the one on parking. It's also one that has one of the tightest deadlines because we need to implement by June 30th of 2023. So we need council to move forward with a land use initiation process. And I wanted to just say a couple of things about that because we're not presupposing the direction you're going to go, where you're going to land or fall. There's 3 motions in your packet, and I think you're going to cover those as well. When you get to that place, the 3rd motion is the one that actually just says we're initiating a land use code amendment to comply with either this way or that way. We haven't determined yet, but we do need to start moving to get those legal timelines going. Understanding this is a topic that will have a lot of interest from you and the community, and we're likely to need and want to get a lot of feedback on how we do that. So didn't want you, when you looked at that, to feel like you're today making a decision about exactly what's happening with Parkman. We're just complying. So with that, I will turn it over to Lydia Bishop to kick us off.
Thank you very much, Sarah. A few things that I may repeat that Sarah said, but good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I am Lydia Bishop, Building and Permit Services Director, and with me is Reed Verner. He's our Land Use Supervisor in BPS. And also we have Jeff Petrie in the audience, ready to step in if we need him. He's our Curbside Services Director, and also I call him the parking czar.
All right.
That was a happy laugh. That was a like, wow, aren't you awesome laugh.
It's a great title.
So as Sarah mentioned, we were here about 2.5 weeks ago. Heather O'Donnell gave an overview of all of the rules. Rob Interfeld discussed the TSP updates and scenario planning portion of the rules, and I touched very briefly on parking. So today we'll discuss those parking rules in detail. And again, as Sarah said, they have the shortest timelines for compliance, and we can talk about the land use code initiation to codify the rules. And again, as Sarah said, you have some options there, including one that just sets us on the path. So what we'll cover today is a lot. We'll start with a big picture overview of all of the rules that we'll be discussing. The parking reform rules that go into effect first on December 31st, the EV charging rules, electric vehicle charging rules, which go into effect March 31st. And then Reed will delve into the details regarding parking, starting with the rules that go into effect automatically by December 31st. And then we'll discuss council options, which we're referring to as option 1, option 2A, and 2B. And I have a diagram in a second that will help with this. We'll talk about which rules have option for a timeline adjustment and what's needed in order to submit for that. And then, of course, we'll have plenty of time for questions and discussion. So as I mentioned, this is the diagram that tries to capture the rules that we're going to be covering today. As I said, it is a lot. So we've tried to color code them for clarity. The one on the top there, parking reform near transit corridors and for some housing and childcare uses, those go into effect December 31st, and there's no way to adjust that timeline. Similarly, the electric vehicle charging rules in effect March 31st, no adjustment. And then we'll go into the parking mandates and the parking regulation improvements, which again, this is where you have some options, and Reed will walk us through those. So the first rules that go into effect, parking reform near frequent transit corridors and for some housing and childcare uses. And those are listed up there. Essentially what happens is after December 31st, even though those rules won't be codified yet, the city will not be able to apply those to any development proposals. The frequent transit corridor, which I have a slide of next, is defined as half a mile from frequent transit, which is 4 stops or more at peak times. So that map is shown here. So again, even though the rules won't necessarily be codified, we as staff will not be able to apply them at the time of development review. Electric vehicle charging. So Heather talked a bit 2 weeks ago about the state has adopted a goal that 90% of new electric vehicles or new vehicles be electric vehicles. And to promote the use of these and to provide the infrastructure they need, the new rules require some new developments to provide for charging capacity for 40% of new multifamily or multi-use developments. And as of July 2022, this year, the building code does require 20% of parking spaces in new multi-unit buildings of 5 or more, and new commercial buildings have 20% of their parking spaces be EV capable. So the climate friendly rules are a little different in that it increases the multi-unit buildings or 5 or more to 40%, but do not apply to commercial. So again, these regulations are not required to be adopted locally, but we are strongly encouraging the council to do that as this packet, so developers are aware of what rules apply when they look at our wonderful land use code. And now I'll turn it over to Reed.
So we're going to start getting into the parking reform options available in the next slide, but it's worth noting here that there are some parking regulation improvements required by June 30th, 2023, regardless of the option chosen. These rules include provisions that encourage the conversion of existing underused parking areas, as well as the requirement to install 50% tree canopy or solar panels and pedestrian facilities for larger parking areas or parking areas that are larger than 1/4 acre in size. Now let's move on to the options available for reducing the parking mandates. The most straightforward option provided by the state rules is to repeal all parking mandates throughout the city. No other code changes would be needed. It should be noted that if the city does choose this first option and opts for either of the second options, A or B below, staff may need to return after climate-friendly areas are adopted to reevaluate parking for rule compliance. The second option is to reform our parking requirements and involves choosing one of 2 approaches. Note that choosing the second option, either approach A or B, also requires all of the following. These provisions include the requirement to price at least 10% of our on-street parking and to report the percentage to the state, as well as a list of other specific parking requirements. We'll circle back on these if you have questions in the Q&A. So choosing the second option to reform our parking requirements provides a choice between 2 approaches. Option 2A is the fair parking policy approach. This approach requires cities to adopt at least 3 of these 5 policies. The first 2 policies include requiring unbundled parking, which means that parking spaces must be rented, leased, or sold separately from the unit itself. The code requires that renters, lessors, or buyers must be allowed to opt out of renting, leasing, or buying the parking space. The unbundling requirements also applies to existing and not just new multifamily and commercial developments. Option 2B is the reduced regulation parking management approach. With this approach, cities are required to adopt all of these changes. We know there's a lot of information here, and we're happy to circle back and answer any questions about these regulations during the Q&A session. However, as a brief summary, the required changes include removing mandates for a variety of specific uses, small sites, vacant buildings, studios and 1-bedroom units, LEED certified or Oregon residential reach code developments, and more.
So the council considerations as you think about all of this very clear and straightforward information. We just wanted to note that a significant portion of the city, shown in the light green color here, will already have the parking minimums eliminated regardless of what you do moving forward. So it's the white area, which if you choose option 2A or 2B, that would be applicable there. If that makes sense. Similarly, this is the map that includes, I know it's very hard to see, but it includes the frequent transit corridors I showed previously, the zoning, just for kicks and giggles. But it also outlines the areas of most of the existing multifamily development that has, that's in the city right now. And so again, in those areas, these new rules would not apply because multifamily developments already have their parking minimums eliminated by the previous rules. So as I mentioned earlier, there is the possibility of requesting alternative timelines from the state. They're only available for parking mandates and the parking regulation improvements. So those were the options 1, 2A, and 2B. They need to be submitted by January 31st, 2023, which I thought was a year from now, but it really is just a few months from now. Why do you think that's funny? It requires describing what work is underway, what dates we expect to complete the work, why we need those adjustments, and additional requirements that we have to submit to DLCD for their consideration and either approval or not. Regardless if we are directed to take that approach, we will still need to continue with this work simultaneously in the event the alternative is not approved. And I did want to note, and we talked about this the last time, during rulemaking, staff, Mayor Venus, Councilor Surratt, and that staff included Rob Innerfeld, Heather O'Donnell, and the planning director, Alyssa Hanson, strongly requested and recommended to DLCD that we have additional time to implement these rules. There were some slight adjustments made, but DLCD wanted to stay on the path for what they call the urgent timelines. So we don't have a crystal ball about what DLCD will say, but I just wanted to bring that information forward. So code amendment initiation, this is our favorite code, the land use code. So regardless of the path that you choose and whether we decide to request an alternative timeline, we are requesting that you initiate a code amendment today. And that code amendment is consistent with those that are listed in the AIS. And there's 3 of them. As Sarah said, it's actually the first one that is just the general, just get going on this work. And then the numbers 2 and 3 have a more specific path for the options, either option 1 or 2A or 2B. This will allow us to begin the process, drafting the code. We would need to schedule a public hearing with our planning commission. We're hoping to do that before the end of this year, and then we'll come back to schedule a public hearing with the city council early next year. And that concludes our very simple, straightforward presentation. We are available to answer your questions. And again, Jeff Petrie is here as well. This is still all new and swirling around to us. So if we can't answer them on the spot, we will provide them to you as quickly as possible. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to, one more
We'll keep talking here while
you'll keep talking.
your
Okay,
questions.
we're wanting to make sure we're clarified about which is the most direct and straightforward of these and the simplest before we
before you put the motion on.
putting motions on the table.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we understand the implications of those motions. So I thank you for this. This packet was daunting. And so I appreciate that kind of high level view of it. I'm sure counselors are going to have specific questions, and I have Alan in the queue.
Mike.
Oh, and Mike. Okay. Oh, Mike first. Okay. Mike, take it away.
Thank you, Mayor. I just I understand that there are several parts to this and several options we might choose from. And so this question, I'm not sure how you will choose to answer the question. But I first of all, I want to say, by the way, I appreciate the work that's gone into this. I know this drops an awful lot on staff very quickly. But I also see Lauren online here, and I noted that that Catherine was here as well, that may want to add the answer to my question. Please talk about all the potential consequences for failing to meet the imposed deadlines.
I'll jump in on this one. Thank you, Councilor Clark. Assistant City Attorney Lauren Summers. I will say that the climate-friendly rules are very clear that if the council doesn't act to adopt the parking regulations on or before June 30th, 2023, then the City of Eugene will not be able to impose parking mandates. That is, will not be able to require off-street parking beyond that date. So effectively, by taking no action, you default into option one, no parking mandates citywide. There are other portions of the rules that allow for LCDC to issue an enforcement order if communities don't comply. And I would need to look into that a little bit more closely to see if that to parking regulations, or if it's simply that if the city doesn't act by June 30, 2023, we are unable to apply parking mandates.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, Alan and then Claire.
Claire, in your last meeting, it's only appropriate we talk about parking.
Yeah, you're stealing my first line there, Alan.
Oh, sorry. I'll cross it off now. I won't say it. Undo, yeah. Rewind. What's the rationale for this reduction in parking from LCDC's DLCD's perspective?
Well, Heather talked a little bit about that last time. They are looking at this as a way to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. As you'll all recall, when I was here in July during the building electrification discussion, we had those diagrams from the CAP 2.0. And so I don't need to tell you that transportation is the largest bucket of GHG reductions. You know, some of the things like unbundling the parking, provide equity so that people who aren't using parking aren't paying for it. Because right now, if you rent an apartment, even if you're a cyclist, you're still paying for that parking space. And so unbundling that parking is actually something that's being discussed for quite a while as a way to provide some equity there. So people are not paying for something that they're not using.
Okay. I don't like this for several reasons. One of the things that was clear to me that they didn't take into consideration where the state was in all its regulations and programs that they put in place, which actually show us on track to meet our greenhouse gas goals by 2035. And so the rush associated with this is illusory. We don't need to have it be so fast. And I think that the fact that they just want to get off their plate was kind of a BS reason. So I think this could be done at a pace that's much more reasonable and allows for better work. So that's point one. The other part is the unintended consequences of this and what's going to happen and associated with this. And we've talked about parking ad nauseum, especially during missing middle housing, where if you don't provide for parking spaces, they pushes them into the neighborhoods and onto the streets, and we're just going to create problems over there as opposed to actually solving the reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. Just by making it harder to park doesn't make the problem go away. It may in a modest way, but I think it's a wrong tack to take. I wanted to ask about what's actually due on these dates. So on the third to last slide, the alternative timelines said submitted by January 31st. Then right below it says requires the description, blah, blah, blah. But what actually do we have to do by January 31st? Do we have to start it or do we have to finish it?
We have to finish it. It has to be submitted to the state.
Submit a draft, right, for their approval. Okay.
Correct.
And then on slide 3, so by December 31st, it's the transit corridors and housing and childcare uses. And by March 31st, EV charging capacity, and then June 31st, the rest of this. We have to pick our parking mandate. So we have time to do that, right? Okay, I got that. Question about the half mile. So we spent an enormous amount of time talking about this and missing middle housing code. How does it interact with our quarter mile walking distance? Is this a walking distance or is it as the crow flies, or how does this get interpreted?
I don't know, Lauren, Reed can talk a bit about how it compares to the middle housing, but I think it's just this straight distance from that corridor, right?
So
as the crow flies, I guess.
Actually, I will jump in and say that the rules allow for measurement via walking distance or straight line. So council could make that choice about how you wanted to measure the half mile distance. And compared to middle housing, so for middle housing, what the code that council ended up adopting removes off-street parking requirements for middle housing located within a quarter mile walking distance of an MX station. So the areas are relatively circumscribed and only apply to middle housing. And I think Lydia and Reed have a slide transit parking if you're interested. For climate friendly, it would be a half mile from a frequent transit corridor, which is a lot more of the city once you look at that map of frequent transit corridors, which are basically MX corridors or corridors where bus service comes at least 4 times an hour during peak hours. And that half mile distance can be measured either as walking distance or as a straight line distance, and it's applicable to all uses. It's not applicable only to middle housing. Reed, do you have anything to add to that? Did I miss anything?
No, yeah, you hit the transit corridors. There's middle housing also had some exemptions for low end or affordable housing options as well. And then they had the on-street parking credits. And so this would just doesn't really touch on those requirements, but would expand the area that we would be prohibited from applying parking mandates.
Can you pull up slide 4? Keep going. Oh yeah, that's it. So the half mile only applies to those bulleted things.
No, the half mile is the area within which no minimum parking requirements are applicable. Correct.
Not no parking, no minimum parking.
And right.
And then there's can't require parking for those 6 bullets.
Right. And as I think I noted on the 12th, and you know this obviously, it doesn't mean that parking can't be provided in the city. Developers can still provide parking. We haven't talked a lot about maximums. We currently have maximums in our code, but it doesn't prohibit parking. It just prohibits us from requiring a minimum amount.
If there's no minimum amount, the minimum amount could be 0.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, Claire and then Jennifer.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, so I could not resist the irony of having my last city council meeting be on the topic of parking. And I will confess, I'm not disappointed that I won't be part of this council as you all grapple with these mandates and the political fallout that's going to come along with them. It's going to be ugly. Some questions. So Alan's question kind of got at this, but it's this unbundling concept doesn't mean the parking space won't be built, right? It just means if the parking space is built, the tenant or the condo owner doesn't have to pay for it.
Correct.
So it's not necessarily going to functionally reduce how much land is used for parking.
It could, I suppose, really that's going to be up to the developer. If there's no parking minimums, they can provide what parking they choose to. But yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean they won't build that parking space. It just is unbundled or not having to be paid for by a lessee who doesn't use parking.
And this is all for future construction only, correct?
Yes, and as Reed noted.
Yeah, it technically applies to all multifamily, mixed use and commercial development. So even things that are in existence, technically, they would also be required to unbundle their parking.
Okay.
Which we're not quite sure how we do yet.
Yeah, the DLCD gave the direction that they would understand it's an enforcement matter and would honor best efforts to handle that on the enforcement level.
Okay, so one of the options referenced the REACH code, but my understanding is the REACH code has not been adopted yet. Is that correct?
It is correct. It's not formally adopted in the city of Eugene.
Or even as a matter of state law, right?
It is an option, so you.
Oh,
can
it's an
build
optional
the
code,
REACH
not a mandated.
That's
code.
correct.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks. And then it's kind of referenced here in the AIS, but could you elaborate, and this might be Lauren's area, how these various options we have would intersect with the climate friendly areas, regional town centers? Because I think that's a really important consideration for this council to think about as they think about which direction to go, because that, you know, at one point I heard, well, we could designate all of downtown as our climate friendly area, and that might capture most of what we need to do to comply and not have to get rid of off-street minimums for other parts of the city. So I'd like to hear a little bit more about that.
And
So Councilor Syra, the parking requirements and the requirements for designation of climate friendly areas are separate directives from DLCD. So there are some parking maximums associated with climate friendly areas. So once the city has designated those areas, we'll need to also adopt some off-street parking maximums. So you can't build more than X number of spaces. In addition to the minimums that council is considering now and has to adopt before June 30th. And I guess the other thing that I would say is, you know, if downtown becomes a climate friendly area or the climate friendly area, we already, under the city's current code, don't require minimum off-street parking in downtown. It's a parking exempt area already. And, you know, the boundaries of the parking exempt area and the climate friendly area may or may not be exactly the same. But right now, from, I believe it's Shelton McMurphy up to 13th and between Lincoln and High is the downtown parking exempt area. So hopefully that gets at some semblance of answering your question.
You tried. There's still a lot to puzzle through. So Lydia mentioned briefly the efforts that staff and the mayor and I as council president made to kind of represent the council's perspective on this as the rulemaking was underway. And I was going to bring this up in our executive session, but then the city attorney reminded us to stay on topic. So, you know, so I've shared this before, but I think it's worth repeating. So in my role as council president, I gave testimony to the committee. I emphasized the extremely challenging political landscape posed by parking regulation. We were all in the middle of doing our middle housing code amendments at the time. So, but instead of recognizing that and considering ways to support cities in this implementation, instead, I was one of the only witnesses directly questioned by a member of the panel who was asking, why is Eugene resisting this mandate? And I could have said, well, I think the answer is obvious in the question, right?
But that would have been smart.
Instead, so there's just, I know my time's up, but there's just not really any real recognition from this body on what we all are gonna have to be doing here on the ground. So this is a big lift.
Thank you, Jennifer, and then Matt.
Yeah, thanks. So I wanted to understand our timeline
Get Mike.
here a little better.
Yeah.
So, okay, so our first part I got in December, end of December, second part, end of March. And then for the third part, if I'm understanding this right, it has to be done by the end of June. If we want to, we can request an extension. That request has to be in by the end of January.
Yes.
Okay. So my concern here is that's 5 months after that. Like, do we know how certain an extension would be? Because it feels like at that point, we almost have to be done anyway.
Correct. Right. And that is the concern. And that's why I mentioned that simultaneously, if we're doing the work to submit for an extension, we're also going to continue to move
Right.
forward and do it as if we need to meet the June 31st timeline. And I don't know, perhaps Councilor Cyrette has a better sense, but like I said, Eugene made a really concerted effort to explain the need for a slower approach.
Right.
And
They did not agree.
they did not agree.
Which makes me worried that the bar for an extension is going to be extremely high. And knowing that our staff will be working hard and probably making progress, I feel like we'll be penalized for that, right? For our efficiency. So, I guess my question is, I'm sure you've kind of thought about this already, but the timeline that we're given, not with an extension, like how realistic is it to be able to get the work done, to have some kind of meaningful engagement with the community and get it done by June 31st?
And that's an excellent point. And it is going to be very difficult to have meaningful engagement.
Yeah.
Honestly, we'd be limited to the public hearing process.
Okay. So if we want to have anything with like meaningful, we need to get that extension. And so let's say we apply for okay, it's sort of like a circular
Right.
problem. Like we can't, like, what's the point of planning a big process if we can't end up okay, this is very frustrating.
I understand.
I have no hope for you maybe, but I appreciate you putting this all out here for us. Okay. I assume at some point you're going to explain how the 3 motions are different. Okay.
I just wanted to weigh in really quickly because of the meaningful process question. That's a concern I have. We've already had a conversation around communications and engagement and how do we do this and throwing out ideas, because if you think about the amount of engagement we did with middle housing and we get to the end and people still felt like they didn't know and didn't really even understand that it was being mandated by the state. We have a heavy lift for people to understand this is a state requirement that we're responding to in a way that everybody gets that word. It ties in directly to some of the conversations we had over the weekend around communications and how do we get out our priority messaging. So I'm hopeful we can do as good a job as possible.
My only other piece of advice is if whatever engagement we do, we're extremely clear about where you do not have a choice, right? You can tell us, but it does not matter. Our hands are tied. And then like the parts where we have a very little amount of choice, so.
Okay, thank you. Matt and then Randy.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. I'm gonna seek clarity, but first I'm gonna frame my frustration. So apologies ahead of time. This council was very deliberate several months ago when it came to the Middle Housing Code Amendment conversation, striking any proximity to LTD and instead supporting incentives, no on-site parking incentives within a quarter mile of walking distance to MX. Throughout this presentation, I hear, quote, transit-oriented development near frequent transit corridors. And if you go to page I don't know what page it would be, but slide number 12, the council considerations, the areas that are within a half-mile proximity of LTD are noted as frequent transit corridors. And in the bottom right quadrant, right off of 30th, Agate, where my family and I live, and that is not necessarily an as the crow flies or walkable, reasonably walkable location because of how hilly it is to an LTD stop, no matter how frequent that LTD stop may be. My question is, does council have any opportunity or are there any lever we can pull or how pliable are our options? Any one of these options to look at elevation consideration?
My understandable is there's no pliability available to council, but Lauren might have some other thoughts on that.
I agree, Lydia, that Councilor Keating, the only choice that I see for council in the rules related to the no parking mandates within half a mile of frequent transit corridor is the choice whether to measure by walking distance or via a straight line measurement.
I would submit those choices put us in a rock and a hard place. They're just not necessarily it's not reality. The decoupling concerns me. And if we go back to that same slide, we rent. My rent, our family's rent is more than Randy's mortgage. And I could imagine how much more we would have to pay if our parking spaces were decoupled and it gave landlords an opportunity to charge renters even more should we want to use the parking space. So I'm, at this point, a frustrated no. Like I'm channeling my inner Betty Taylor. I'm saying no right now because they're around the corner. There's an election in 41 days. And I would like to think that any one of the three incoming governors, we're gonna have a new governor, that we would have an opportunity as a municipality to lobby the executive branch and the legislative branch appropriately. I would like to see us take steps to that effort. I'm clearly frustrated and watching my P's and Q's because of how upset I am that our hands are tied. That's where I'm at. I may need the second round, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Randy.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. I admit I'm still confused. I read the packet, I listened to this. I think I'm reasonably intelligent. I'm not fine. Well, I try to think that. I'm still trying to, but I'm with Councilor Keating. You know, no, I mean, I know we had a discussion here recently about the larger lawsuit, and I don't want to get into the details of that, but sometimes I think it's important to take a stand, even if you're going to go down swinging, but just from an optics standpoint, making it extremely clear that we disagree with this approach and we disagree with where we're headed. I mean, I'm not all the way there, but there's part of me that just wants to take this on because it's wrong. And it's just this cumulative effect that keeps happening over and over again. With that said, some specific questions. If there is no mandate to provide off-street parking within a half mile from a transit corridor, how does EV charging mandate fit in? I mean, where's somebody supposed to charge their vehicle if there's no off-street parking within a half mile? I mean, it just seems contradictory. And again, it's not you, this is the state. But is that a reasonable question?
It's absolutely a reasonable question. Again, I would just remind counselors that parking may be provided. It's not that it may not be provided. And so if it is provided, those EV charging stations would be required at that rate.
But there's no way to really provide an EV charging station without off-street parking, correct? I mean, you can't just pull into the rose bed. Or parking's.
Probably not good for the rose bed, but I'll let Jeff cover that.
Jeff Petrie, Curbside Services Director. On the curb, you could put an EV charging unit.
Oh.
We haven't done it in our community. There's challenges just maintaining that piece of equipment in the public right of way, but in Portland, they have them on the right of way.
Okay. All right. I hadn't thought of that option. I just hadn't seen that yet. Thank you. And I think I know the answer is, I just want to confirm this won't have an effect one way or another on the challenges we're having with RV and trailer parking on the streets.
No, it doesn't have anything to do with the right of way.
I didn't think so, but I didn't know if this was just going to push things and create more issues there. That's always front and center on my mind, as I know it is many of my constituents. So that's something I just want to make sure we have that somewhere as we look at whatever the next set of mandates that come down from the state. I guess that's all I have at this point that at least makes sense, but I'm extremely frustrated with yet again the erosion of home rule, yet again unfunded mandate dumped on top of our city when we have a lot of really important issues that we need to be working on. This just seems highly inappropriate, and it also frustrates me when I hear, well, the timelines are for the convenience of the state that's pushing the mandate on top of us. I'm not really concerned about their how well it works for them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Emily.
Thank you. I have some questions, obviously. If we sued or challenged it, the timelines would still be in effect. So we'd have to deal with the suit and writing the guidelines at the same time. Because if we lost, we would still have to do it. The option 2, the list on slide 9, that happens for either A or B. Those all have to go into effect. And then the A and B is what we would do in addition to it.
That's right.
And it seems like, especially in B, are we repealing so much stuff that we're almost getting back to the do what they say anyway? How much stuff is not affected by do the minimum and do 2B?
Right.
It seems similar.
And that's why I showed that slide, this one, because there's just not a lot of area left in the city that options 2 would apply to.
So, in some ways, just lifting the minimums would be the quickest, possibly the most equitable. The chance for businesses to do park and shuttle, more employment. And I know that, I don't like home rule either. I'm really concerned about it, but I'm also concerned that this is going to happen one way or another. And there might be a different way to protest these home rule horrifying situations without making our life so expensive and taking away from other projects at this time. And then I'm a little wondering about the difference between the climate special areas and the rest of the city. They're more strict in the climate areas.
The climate friendly areas.
Yeah.
What do you mean by more strict?
I mean, what is the difference in the rules between the climate friendly areas and the rest of the city that's not in a climate friendly area?
I'm going to ask Lauren if you can dive in on that one, differentiating what's different in the climate friendly areas.
I apologize. I'm sorry. I was looking things up and I lost my Zoom window. Here I am. So I think I misspoke a little bit earlier in response to Councilor Syrat's question. If the council right now doesn't choose the eliminate all parking mandates option, and instead chooses option B, once the climate friendly areas are designated, there are requirements related to parking mandates that apply to the climate friendly areas as well. So I think maybe that's what you were really asking, Councilor Syrat, which is if council chooses option B, one of the option Bs, and implements alternative regulations instead of eliminating parking mandates, and then designates climate friendly areas, will the parking mandates be eliminated there anyway? And I think the general answer is yes, and I can get back to you with a more specific response to that question to give you better information. As to Councilor Semple's question, the climate friendly areas generally, and again, I'll defer to Heather O'Donnell for a better, more thorough explanation of this coming back to you in the future, but the climate friendly areas are intended to be areas of the city that can support 30% of the city's ongoing housing need. And so there are requirements associated with development standards. Typically they're thinking that it will be densely built, there will be a dense amount of housing, and that these climate friendly areas will hopefully be built in a way that folks can access housing and employment opportunities and other things all within a smaller area. So that would cut down the need to drive and therefore cut down vehicle emissions. So heights will typically be higher. Overall density will typically be more dense than in like an R1 zone, for example. So I think you're going to be seeing more multifamily type housing, more potentially like dense middle housing types in that area. And there are some parking mandates that go along with that. Does that get at answering your question a little bit, Councilor Semple?
I think so. So we have to do the big set of rules, no matter which option, and we need to have climate friendly areas. So if downtown is already has the rules to satisfy a climate friendly area, then we wouldn't have to worry about that.
Right. I mean, that's something that you can see in that frequent transit corridor map, that downtown is already within it. So it already has parking minimums eliminated.
So we don't really have to worry about the climate friendly areas as far as parking goes.
Yeah. Probably.
But if we chose the option one of eliminating all the mandates, then the climate friendly areas wouldn't matter, or
well,
they
still have to address the climate friendly areas, but we wouldn't need to revisit
the
parking rules inside the climate friendly areas.
So if we did the minimum, got rid of the mandates, we wouldn't have to worry about having climate friendly areas on top of it.
No, we still have to do the climate friendly.
But we
areas.
would, with
yes.
downtown, we would have satisfied that.
We would have to do climate friendly areas to address the housing needs, as Lauren was saying,
Right,
but
but
we
as
wouldn't
far as
have to
parking-
revisit parking. Right.
Got it. So if we just got rid of the minimums, we would be done
With parking.
with parking. I got it. I know more.
For now. Okay, I'm just gonna sort of do a time check here. I have 5 counselors who want a second round. It is 10 of 1. I'm just assuming that we need to continue with this conversation and let those rounds, and that we will come back and talk about sister cities at another time. I'm just looking at staff.
Councilor Clark had a first round.
He had a first round. He was
you were
first up in the first round. So, yeah, so just putting that out on the table. And then I just have, I mean, I really want counselors to have plenty of chance. I just want to ask a couple of things about the sort of alignment of these rules with the work that you were already doing. And I assume part of the first step out is where is there overlap with some of I'm thinking about the housing implementation pipeline and the questions that Emily was asking So that's sort of my first question is just on a first take, are there policies that obviously come to mind that sort of already align with this, where some of the prep policy work is already, like,
You know,
well, transit oriented development, I guess is, I don't know if it fits with any other policy decisions that we've already made.
well, it does fit with transit-oriented development. It does fit, as Lauren said, we already have a couple of parking exempt areas, including downtown and by the university. In terms of the HIP, I don't believe there's anything really in the HIP that aligns with this reduction of parking. And I can't think of any work that we're doing, certainly in BPS, but I would say in PDD, that again is related to what the state is asking us to do with parking.
So this is, it's obvious this is a big body of work, but it's
Oh, yeah.
all new work is what I
Yes,
was
it
trying to
is.
get at. There's not much that we've already sort of covered this ground.
Correct.
The second thing is around the affordable housing and the parking limits. I don't know, we use federal HUD dollars for affordable housing, and I don't know whether HUD has parking requirements. I'm just wondering if there's a conflict between a state regulation and a federal requirement.
I'll have to check into that. I can get that information from our community development director and get back to the council.
Okay.
That's a good question.
That's great. I think I'll just leave it at that. I have
And that's entirely possible in the same way that many lenders require a certain number of parking spaces too, which is why developers can and will still continue. We just can't mandate it. If that makes sense.
Right. It just feels, and other counselors have alluded to this, that in an effort to create equity, we're actually going to do the opposite. And that if the development of parking is determined by the marketplace, it means expensive units will get parking, lower income units won't, unless there are HUD regulations and others that sort of come into play. So it feels like certainly in the short term that this would backfire in doing that. Okay, I have Mike, Alan, Matt, Claire, and Jennifer in the queue. So Mike, take it away.
Thank you, Mayor. And first of all, I just want to welcome Councillor Keating to the No Fight. I am a longtime practitioner of that fight, and maybe we can have some good conversation about that. I want to note that everybody statewide shares that January 23rd deadline. Am I right with that? For asking for more time?
January 31st, yes.
All cities? Yeah.
Correct.
So the legislature is going to begin to meet at the 1st of February and have a full list of all the cities in the state who are saying, hey, slow down, right?
They should.
Yeah, okay. Well, I would suggest at this point that not just a city, but even at an individual level for those of my colleagues and frankly, those other cities statewide that may feel the same pinch, may want to have strongly worded conversations with your legislative representatives about this and how the legislature may be able to provide us some relief. And to Matt's other point that I started talking about a few weeks ago, I have heard, let's put it that way, I have heard that LCDC's rules were almost entirely, the authority for their orders were almost entirely tied to pre-existing statutes as opposed to the governor's executive orders. So my question, and it doesn't, I'd like a generalized answer today and further detail in writing from staff, but what authority would a new governor have with regard to LCDC rulemaking? Would they be able to slow this down? Would they be able to say, you know what, we're just not going to do this. We're going to exempt all these things that LCDC created. A new governor can do exactly what? And I'm looking at Lauren and Catherine.
Yeah, I can speak to that briefly. I mean, because the LCDC's rulemaking authority comes directly from statute, and that would be what they have to tie it to. It's really the legislature that can be the one that's directing it. Now, depending on what the governor's overall direction is, but an executive order that says now make rules that do the opposite, the authority for LCDC isn't coming from the governor. So just as they would need to cite to a statutory basis to do it. They have the statutory basis to undo it. Now, if the overall direction from the leader of the state is, these are going too fast, you need to look, you need to take a different
Right.
look. Whether that's a requirement or, hey, these went too fast, those are two different things. So there's kind of the political climate of, hey, agencies, you need to be using your legislative authority slightly different. I'm hoping you take another look, but just the overall requirement of it, of a governor saying you can't do it, that's not where they're getting their authority. So it wouldn't be the change. It couldn't be the mandate to change.
And if I could, I'm asking for, just a broad guess here, I suppose. How many state statutes would require adjustment in order to alter LCDC's time-dependent orders based on current statutory authority?
Well, and Lauren, just jump on in and wave your arms and tell me I'm saying this wrong. But I mean, you could have the ever-loving, notwithstanding any other statute, you need to extend all deadlines. I mean, because they get all their authority from the legislative body can say, you need to do this differently and have some, kind of omnibus, notwithstanding any other authority we've ever given you. We're now telling you to do this. So
Yeah. Okay.
she's not waving her
Well,
hands.
it really sounds to me like, although I've heard there are other cities with lawsuits and other things going on, our most effective path to do this so that we might recognize the importance of goal one and have public participation in this process. Our most effective means of accomplishing that might be our collective and individual efforts to lobby the next legislature. So I hope everybody who has such ability will do so. Thanks.
Thank you, Alan, and then Matt.
Yeah, there are some good things in here, but on whole, there's some very problematic parts of this, in particular the timelines and the opportunity within that timeline for meaningful public engagement. I fear this is going to be middle housing all over again, where we don't have any choice, but we unaccurately and unfairly get blamed for imposing this when there's no thing around that ability to do anything about it. I'm wondering, well, one of the other things about the way LCDC approached this is one of their sister agencies, Department of Environmental Quality, the EQC, just passed a rule last week called the Clean Fuels Program Expansion, and it made the greenhouse gas emissions for fuels go increase or reduce by 37% by 2035 to 40. And so that reduces the greenhouse gas emissions from driving around for VMTs. And they're about to pass a rule that California just passed. 100% of new sales of cars will be EVs or zero emission vehicles by 2035. All these things reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but on a really different time frame. And so they didn't take any of that in consideration. They're saying you have to do this tomorrow. My question is, what if we just said, we're going to do this on our timeline because what you've said is just unreasonable and we can't do it? What actually happens? What happens if there's no enforcement on the side of the city? What does LCDC do then? And what happens if it applies to new development and there's no rules and we don't have, and we just keep our rules in place and developers apply them? What's LCDC going to do? How does that?
So I asked a similar question of, as I was hearing, like, let's just say no. So we'll just talk about it in terms of parking. So because if no action is taken at all by the city by June 30th, the way the parking section of these rules are written is that the state law will automatically come in. So what I hear you asking is, and what if we ignore it?
Yeah.
And we just keep our stuff in place and
Until we're done.
Until we're done. I mean, what we anticipate would happening would be an enforcement order from LCDC, DLCD saying you're not in compliance. you know, you're not in compliance, and then we're responding to the enforcement order. Lauren, what, if anything, would you like to add to that?
And then we appeal that and it goes on and so the effect of it is nothing happens,
Well,
correct?
an enforcement order would say there's a law in place and you know you're not in compliance of it. There's not a whole lot to argue there, other than the timeline was unreasonable, but that's not really a basis to defend yourself from. But Lauren, I mean, but that there's not a legal argument to be made if
It's a
we're,
political argument.
it's right.
And a court would have to say, you have to do this, but that could take a long time. Lauren, anything to add?
Yeah, Lauren, you want to speak to this?
No, I mean, I agree with everything that Catherine said.
So it doesn't sound like there's much of a downside to saying, no, we're doing this on our own timeline though.
Well, I think there is. I mean, there always is, and we can have a more robust discussion about this, but we lose, I mean, as you're also talking about wanting to approach and make a political argument to the legislature, if we're just straight up thumbing our nose at a bunch of stuff, we've lost a lot of righteous indignation.
I wasn't saying that. I was saying, no, your timeline's crazy. We're going to do it on a more reasonable timeline, allows for meaningful public engagement. And that means probably end of the year as opposed to June or something like that. And you say, we're on that timeline. You go ahead and do what you need to do, but that's our timeline.
Well, we're also not.
It's not thumbing their nose at them. It's just saying, you guys don't understand what it takes to do this.
There's also the element, I mean, we're just talking about the regulatory and the regulatory agency in this. I mean, there's a component that I haven't really looked at or dug into, and Lauren, if you have speak to it, is you have developers out there that may very well want to build stuff with no parking. They've got skin in the game too. They could bring actions as well pretty quickly. And we just don't know what those look like. And it's all the same people having to defend these. Enforcement orders are extremely time consuming. So are the civil lawsuits that we deal with. So, and it's all the same people. So it's not without a cost or an ability actually to get it done. So if we're working on enforcement and we're doing that stuff, the actual work to accomplish it is now having by its nature to slow down because there's only so many hours within a day. So all of that stuff that just say, if in fact, if it's a few weeks delayed, that's one kind of risk. If it's, we're going to take a year and a half to do this, or we're going to take a full year to do this, I think we can expect that there will be various types of legal challenges that would go on with that, an enforcement order and something else. And Lauren, yeah.
I would also just add, Councilor Zelenka, that if what the city is saying is we intend to comply, we just need more time, that's what the timeline extension process is for. And so, you know, if that's the will of the council to comply, but do it on a different timeline, staff, you know, city manager could be directed to submit a request for a timeline extension and talk specifically about the need to do more public involvement prior to ordinance drafting and our, you know, goal 1 land use adoption process that lives in our code.
Yeah. And we said that, and they said, hell no. And Jennifer's point earlier, what makes you think they're going to, after they said, hell no, they're going to say, well, okay, we changed our mind. So I'm not, but having said that, I think the strategy moving forward is all avenues in every possible way, including that one, including other venues, including a political approach with the legislature to say this timeline is just crazy, especially for meaningful public engagement on it.
All right, Matt, and then Claire.
Thank you, Alan. I appreciate the perspective.
Yes.
In the alternative timeline, slide 14, it indicates that during rulemaking, staff strongly encouraged alternate timelines to be considered. The DLCD maintained the need for, quote, urgent timelines. Why? Why did DLCD?
I wasn't one of the staff people who were there, perhaps the mayor.
I can speak to that because I asked that question very specifically, like, what is the problem with extending the timeline? And the answer was simply because we've been at this a long time, we need to get done. So, you know, it's not,
The request for extension piece jumps out. Can you elaborate on that? And I would welcome or does staff need council to make a motion today in regards to an extension to timeline, or can it just be understood that through our conversation that there's a longing to further explore requests for extension?
So we're trying to actually have, this is all so new and fresh, remembering that this just got passed in August and we're just now understanding it. I actually thought we were already applying for that, but I'm getting a slight different message here. So I think if it's explicit that you want us to do that and you want us to do more community engagement than just meeting the timelines, I think adding it would make it more clear for us and would also allow us to kind of come back with if we need to consider different resources or how we're going to do it. It would just make it more clear that it's for community engagement.
And so I would, any one of these motions, if you make them pass, you could just tack on the end and direct the city manager to.
Yeah, I've got a sentence all.
Okay.
When we get to the motion part, I'll talk about that.
Just to clarify then, what if any one of these motions don't pass? Can we still make that request, that timeline?
Well, you're gonna have to.
One of these will need to pass. They're all ors.
Yeah, and I would say this is my understanding, and I'm not the attorney, but one time I stayed at a Holiday Inn, that if we're applying for an alternative timeline, we need to be able to say to the state, here's the work we're already doing and why we need an adjustment. If we're just not going to comply and we're just asking for more time, I think we're going to get denied. That's just my feeling. So you're going to need to show that you get it. We're moving something forward. We haven't determined exactly how we're going to comply, but we're working towards it and we need more time, is going to be far more compelling, in my opinion.
And we need meaningful public engagement.
Right, to conduct our meaningful, to which we want awards for middle housing. I mean, we're in a fine spot to make that argument. I think we're in a much better spot to make that argument if we're moving towards compliance and we know what it truly takes to have that meaningful engagement.
I want to right size expectations around meaningful community engagement only because we don't have, if we take the time that we did, and I'm not saying that it's not important, the same people are still going to be delayed on Bethel neighborhood planning, university neighborhood planning, all of that other work. So we want to make sure the community is engaged and understands it, but I don't think we want to spend 2 years doing all of that work on this, or we need to have a different discussion about how we're going to resource the other work. That's all.
Okay.
Could you repeat, please, or I trust I'm one of 7 who needs this repeated, so apologies to my colleagues. Could you repeat how staff could best get or advance that request for extension? What language would you like?
I will when we get to the motion
thank you.
part. So I was going to go back to slide 3 when it's time, and I will describe what each one of these motions means.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Claire, then Jennifer, then Randy.
Yeah, so a couple of thoughts, and then I was going to kind of have us thinking about the motion. So yeah, I agree with what the city manager and city attorney were just kind of articulating. Like, I think it'd be much better strategically, tactically to comply while engaging in the political effort to get the mandate amended. A hard and fast refusal, I think, particularly since we're broadcasting that we're talking about here at this table, is probably not the way to go. I think this argument around public engagement is a strong one, right? It feels to me like if we determine our public engagement requires extending the timeline, then maybe that's the time to say, hey, sorry, we've tried, but we have determined that we need to do a deeper dive into public engagement in order to move this, to do our due diligence before we can move this forward. And, Randy, I'll say I've reviewed these rules several times over the past few months, and they still make my head swim. Plus, they make my heart palpitate. So, but looking at the options, I just want to say, like, I don't think the eliminating parking requirements citywide is the right way to go, but that would only apply to new construction then, or would that? Okay, so there is that. And then I noticed in one of the options, I think it was B, second option B, if we went down that route, it would repeal parking mandates for schools. So not that our school districts are planning to build new schools necessarily, but that's just kind of imagine a school that isn't mandated to have a particular amount of parking. So there are, I mean, there's some real implications in which one we choose. It feels to me like second option A, the fair parking policy approach is the least disruptive. I'm not sure. So at this point, I would be leaning towards the third option of the motions, which is the one that says, we're going to do a land use code amendment. It might be this one. It might be that one. We haven't decided yet. It feels like we haven't landed in a space where this council is ready to pick one approach over the other.
Okay, thank you. Jennifer and then Randy.
Yeah, thanks. So, I just wanted to say, while it is extremely tempting to be like, no, we're going to do it on our own timeline. That's probably not the best model of an, responsible government. So, I would not be in favor of doing that, even though, I have a strong desire to just be like, this is unreasonable. We're going to do what's reasonable. But, we don't always get our way, just like sometimes our residents don't always get their way, and you have to move forward. I appreciate what all of my colleagues have been saying. I can see things in here where I see they're trying to get at equitable outcomes. And then I see places where it really feels like they did the opposite. The unbundling thing, I think, is a really good example of that, where I get it. I see what they were looking at, but there are unintended consequences. I think Councilor Keating pointed out really well. So I have a question. If we went with the option one, and I'm not saying this is a good idea or not, would it then be, we wouldn't have to do these weird unbundling things? Or, okay.
Correct.
Okay, if we also did that, would we be prohibited from doing some of the things that have come up, like incentives for electric vehicle parking? Could we incentivize people to have additional parking for like electric vehicles?
We could, and the electric vehicle parking requirements go into effect regardless of the options that you choose. So we could do additional, as Jeff Petrie was saying, in terms of looking at the options for on-street, but the EV charging requirements will go into effect.
I was just worried that, like, if we're supposed to be minimizing parking, if we did things that actually did the opposite, but for a good reason.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I think that would still be considered a parking mandate, even if it's for electric, and I don't.
But the incentivization, I think what the no minimums means that we don't have a requirement that they have to provide it. If we want to encourage them to provide parking, I don't think, Lauren, I don't think we're prohibited from incentivizing it. What we are is prohibited from requiring it.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think it was Councilor Groves that mentioned that you can't, I mean, having it on the street, yes, that's clearly an option, but it's not always the best option, right? And there's only so much parking. So yeah, I had that same concern is if we're trying to get people into these electric vehicles, you then have to charge them. So
Use your rose beds.
and you don't want to be competing at the charger if everyone is going to the community charger, right? That's insanity. Okay. What else? I guess that's it.
Okay. Okay, Randy.
Thank you, Mayor. Building on a question Councilor Surratt asked about new construction, where do significant remodels, additions, where do those fall into the?
So with building additions, we have a parking requirement. So in this case, if we pass the no parking minimums, we would not require additional parking with a building expansion. The existing parking would remain, but we couldn't require new parking spaces for that additional square footage.
And I guess my last comment really is probably more for the public that's listening. I find it ironic that the state cuts us no quarter and cities no quarter on rules that they impose, yet they fail to implement a mandate by the voters under ballot measure 110 and have not provided one single treatment center, is my understanding, which was mandated in that vote. And I don't understand how we are held to a different standard than they are when they can just thumb their nose at the voters of Oregon and not implement that critical part of ballot measure 110. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ellen, okay, I have Emily for a second round. I would like to
I'm quick.
finish with the second round, Ellen, if you must, because we need for the manager to talk to the motions and we still have that work to do. Okay, all right, Emily?
If perchance we chose no minimum, and then it would happen very fast, and would we still have a public hearing with the planning commission and then with us? So it's gonna have to go lickety split no matter how we do it to get to January.
Correct. If you choose any of these options, right, we would have a planning commission public hearing before the end of the year, and then we would schedule one with the council early next year, regardless of which option one.
So we have till June.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We have till June, correct.
Thank you.
January deadline is for filing the request for an extension.
Okay, so we have, if we did public engagement, then we would have a planning commission hearing, and then we would have our hearing. So we would have to do nothing but public engagement for a month or so.
Minimum.
Thank you.
Okay, Lauren, you have an explanation?
I do, Mayor, thanks. I just wanted to say that the timeline for the land use code changes that would need to take effect no later than June 30th, 2023 looks something like this. We get direction from council to initiate a code amendment. Staff goes away and drafts the code amendments. And in the case of a removal of the parking mandate citywide, I think that will be relatively straightforward. In the case of the second and third, or options 2A and 2B, it's more detailed. There are more kind of moving pieces, and there are more pieces of the code that would need to be amended to implement those options. Then we would give notice to DLCD, which is legally required at least 35 days before the planning commission hearings, hold the planning commission hearing. The planning commission would deliberate and make their recommendation to you. Then the council would hold a public hearing. You would deliberate and make a decision on the code amendments to make sure that they were effective no later than June 30th. And so given that timeline, it is very tight. Without an extension, I don't think there's time for planning staff to do public engagement above and beyond that which would be required by our code through the land use adoption process. Unlike middle housing, where there was a substantial amount of public engagement that took place kind of before the land use code amendments were even drafted, not to mention DLCD notice and all the things that come after that. So hopefully that's a little bit. So if it's the council's interest in providing for time to do additional public engagement beyond what's required by the land use code, then an extension of time would be necessary, and we would need to apply for that and hopefully get it. And the application would be due not later than January 31st.
That's your
Yeah,
question.
thank you.
Alan, very quickly, but
Yeah, just clarify, my all options on all fronts includes moving forward, but also lobbying legislature and governor, but also requesting extension as well as other items. But this minimal amount of public engagement is really troublesome to me. I wondered if we wouldn't extend a formal invitation to LCDC to come to Eugene for a community forum on this topic and have them come down and hear about this from our public and from our city council, and get a little firsthand what's actually happening. So there's actually some commissioners from here. So
I like that. There's a lot of smiles around the table.
and so with that, I'm in favor of moving forward with option 3 under the all options on all fronts.
Okay.
That one seems the least objectionable. Thanks.
Okay, so, yeah.
Or
that
whatever
was
option three ends up looking like.
Perfect. And I was gonna turn to the manager to just walk us
Okay.
through that first.
Sorry, I think I confused the mayor before this meeting. So the way these motions are laid out are this. So the first motion basically directs us to start complying with these rules. And it would include, you'd still be exploring at a future date whether you're doing any of the light green things below. It could be option 1, option 2A, or option 2B. It doesn't say that. It just says start moving. The second one is start moving, and we want to do option 1. We want to eliminate. The third one says start moving, and we want to do either 2A or 2B. We haven't determined that yet. So 1 is anything could happen. 2 is just the minimum, and 3. And then I gave the council president some language to add to the end that directs us to apply for the alternative timeline for community engagement.
So just to rephrase this, just to make sure, option 1 is the one that doesn't tie our hands in any direction.
any
It
way.
just says we're gonna explore our options and work
Yeah.
towards compliance. Okay. Thank you. So with that,
Ready for a motion?
yes.
Move to direct the city manager to initiate a land use code amendment to comply with electric vehicle charging and the state option to adopt either the fair parking pricing policy approach or reduced regulation parking management approach consistent with the climate-friendly and equitable rural communities rules, and to apply for an alternative timeline to allow for additional community engagement.
Second.
Okay, discussion on that? Yeah, I see Lauren has written those. So yes.
I suspect that Catherine and I are about to say the same thing, which is, I just want to clarify that the motion that was made initiates a code amendment that would take staff down the track of either option 2A or option 2B. That is yet to be decided. But you are kind of foreclosing the idea of eliminating parking minimum citywide. And if that is what council wants to do, that's great. But that is my interpretation of the motion.
Yes,
now.
100%.
Yep, that's the one I put out.
Okay, great. Thank you, Councilor. Sweat.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Emily?
Thank you. I think it's already been answered, but I'm in favor of keeping all our options open. And I'm not sure I want staff to go very far down a path that we might not take. So I don't know whether that means I won't vote against this, but that would be my, I'd rather keep our options open. Thank you.
Alan?
I'm wondering if we need to formalize the idea of inviting LCDC down here for a community forum.
That's a different motion. Let's,
And whether or not it should be added in here
well,
or as a different motion, or do we just need, we don't need a motion?
yeah, let's leave that. Let's resolve which of these motions there's a motion on the table. Let's resolve that.
We'll do it after.
Okay, yeah. Jennifer?
Yeah, so I also would prefer to go with number 1 only because while it seems extreme, some of the parts of A and B really concern me. Yeah, so I'm gonna vote against this one, but I would prefer the first one.
Any other comments?
Does it preclude the first one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
How can you write it so it doesn't?
It's option 1.
It's option 1.
Can you write it so it doesn't
There
preclude?
are 3 options. One would have keep all 3 open. The one I picked eliminates the idea of eliminating all parking minimums across the city.
Right, what I was suggesting was adding something in there that would not eliminate that.
Well, that's the first
That's
motion
the first one.
that I didn't make.
That's the
Wow.
first one.
She just.
But it also doesn't talk about the,
Right.
Well, you could
The first one is the broadest and the most general, so it leaves the most flexibility for staff to do their research.
what I was suggesting was, if option 3 included all of the options, including fair parking and eliminating parking and the
Oh,
other.
That's option 1.
That's option 1.
So
That's
I
option
think
one.
part of the
So it
problem.
doesn't say
the
that.
word Options and we've got option 1, option 2A and option 2B, and we have motion 1, 2, and 3
Right.
that actually don't
Right, sorry.
correspond to the options.
Well, they
I think that's
correspond to the options in the AI.
They do correspond to the options in the AA, but not the options on the page. So motion number 1, if you add on that tagline of and seek your extension and seek to get an alternative timeline, would encompass all three. Option one, eliminate all minimums, option 2A and option 2B. So motion one does that. She made motion 3, which is 2A and 2B.
I get it. So option 1 is all 3, option 2 is only 2.
Right, right, right. Any other comments or questions? Sorry. Mike, take it away.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the, and I can't remember who said it, the point that responsible people have to start taking responsible actions when the consequences could be serious. But I'd like to agree with Alan and channel my inner Betty Taylor a little bit as well, and say that much like House Bill 2001, each of these motions contain a statement of initiation of staff action to change land use code at the beginning to comply. And I just think, I think that the legislature needs to understand and hear from us our strong request that they act on a larger scale to create reasonable timelines for this work. And so I'll vote no on all of them. I don't think my vote will carry, but I wish we would tell the legislature, no, we're not going to comply, and put them in the position of needing to be reasonable about what they're directing LCDC to do. Thank you.
Any other comments? Emily. Sure.
Thank you. Would the first motion also include the option to, at the timeline, just say, no, we're not going to do it? But we would have initiated some of the work to give us more information, get more public input.
You don't have to vote on anything, so you can not do it by not
doing it.
Okay, okay, but that's not
right.
possible.
So
If you initiate it, right? You initiate it and the initiation starts the process. We write the code, we do all the things, and at some point you vote it in. If you choose not to vote it in, essentially, you've done a lot of work.
Right, right. Thank you. That helps.
I think we're ready for a vote, but I just wanted to weigh in on this, which is that I do not really support option 3. I think at this point, it would be helpful for staff to be able to look at the cost and benefits of all of the options and be able to come back thoughtfully with that. Not that I'm not in support necessarily that we would eliminate all parking restrictions, but I would just like to give staff the room to sort of think through what their options are rather than foreclosing that evaluation. So that's my 2 cents, but I think we're probably ready for a vote. So all in favor of the motion on the table, which is motion number 3, please raise your hands. Just me. All opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. All right.
Historic vote.
A historic vote. Okay. So
You want to make another motion?
you want to make another motion?
Yeah, I'll let the mayor ask me to. Move to direct the city manager to initiate a land use code amendment to comply with the electric vehicle charging and parking climate friendly and equitable community rules, and to apply for an alternative timeline to allow for additional community engagement.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on this? All in favor, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, I'm going to vote in favor since I will have to.
there's
No,
7
no, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay,
And
opposed?
for the opposed.
1, 2, 3. Oh, that's right. We're missing Greg.
Counselor.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, so that passes. Thank you.
Yeah, and maybe before you drop the official motion, can you say again what your intent with that was?
My intent was to invite LCDC down here for a community forum on the climate friendly and equitable community rules for a community forum.
Prior to us initiating the
As
work,
soon as possible. No, not prior to.
public forum?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to
Community
narrow it because I don't want to also have like a whole nother,
Yeah, it doesn't
So-
delay our work, but.
so just
in
a
the near
public
term,
forum.
as soon as it can be arranged, sooner the better.
Okay, I'm gonna ask one more clarifying question. Sorry, Mayor.
That's okay.
So we're inviting them. Are we having this community forum at the beginning of all of this, regardless of whether they choose to accept our invitation?
The invitation would be for them to come down here into our
So if they
community,
don't accept that invitation,
and we don't necessarily.
okay,
do it.
that's what I want to clear. And also clarify if you mean the LCDC commission, staff, or both. So you may
Well,
just add,
DLCD and
Oh, yeah.
LCDC.
Yeah.
Let's see.
well, whoever it is you want to
It's the
come.
commission
Okay.
who makes the rule.
Okay.
Yep.
I know, I was just trying to understand it before he made it.
Oh,
Sorry.
are you making a motion? My recommendation would be that your council leadership and your intergovernmental relations committee look at that idea and come back with a proposal. Cause we don't do community forums as a council, right? That's an unusual request, so I think it needs to be shaped up a little bit.
It's unusual times.
Yep.
Well, my
So,
motion
but that would allow,
my wish would be to explore that invitation.
rather than putting it on staff to figure it out.
Well, yeah, okay.
Yeah, because this is an excellent point, because
We don't
IGR
need
would
to
do
vote
that.
on that if
Right,
everybody.
because
nods.
IGR could do that outreach, right? IGR could do that outreach. All right, Matt, did
Understood.
that answer your
That-
question too?
That satisfies.
Okay, so we don't need to have a motion on the table. IGR can take that on and, wow. Okay, thank you very much. I'm sorry, Jason, we just didn't get to Sister Cities. Thank you very much for your service. Council President Saret, you took us out with a bang. So thank you for all your work. We are adjourned.